Hi, welcome to the new voting project. My name is Kanal, your host. Looks like it's just going to be me on this episode. And today we're joined by Carroll Fife, an Oakland City Council member representing District 3, the director of ACE in Oakland, a longtime community organizer, and one of the founding members of Moms for Housing, also my personal hero, but we'll just put that aside for now. Thank you so much for joining us today. I understand you're really busy, but thank you. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Of course, same here. So yeah, let's get into this. Just for our viewers, kind of talk a little bit about your background, and talk about how college prepared you to assume your responsibilities you do today.
Whew, my background, just really quickly in a nutshell, I grew up in the Midwest from a very small town in a working class family where my dad worked as an electrician and my mom raised me and two siblings. Um, had a really good and strong elementary and high school education. And then shortly after my high school graduation, I moved to California. So 3 years after I graduated from high school, I didn't go to college. I took some community college classes and then some technical courses at a local business school, but I didn't directly go to college. I had a son when I was 18. And so I was more interested in like, how do I make sure that I'm finding living wage work to pay for, making sure that I can take care of a child. Um, and I moved to California and picked up my studies here. I went to every single Peralta college, every school. I went to Laney, I went to the College of Alameda, I went to Vista College, then I went to BCC as it was named after the change. And I went to the College of Alameda and I ultimately got an associate's degree and transferred to Holy Names University to pursue my bachelor's and then my teaching credential and my master's in urban education. Um, but in terms of preparing me for adulthood, I think it was just the rigors of having to meet deadlines, to fulfill responsibilities and requirements through assignments, and not just like classroom assignments, but also real life, real world work. And that really happened at Holy Names. And it actually prepared me in terms of introducing me to people in real life through action research. And that was the key. It was action research, an intentional project by one of my professors, Dr. Kitty Kelly Epstein, who had students doing work in the community. It was a part of the curriculum where you have to get engaged in things that are happening in your neighborhoods or throughout the city. And so I think in that sense, that was the real world preparation because everything else was just really jumping through hoops and seeing if you can get things done in the way somebody asked for it and the time frame that they asked for it. So I don't know if that's your question, but I think the most I got out of it was the action research projects that I had to do in undergrad.
Right. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Actually, I'd probably take that class.
I mean, you should. It's
Uh,
what it led me to being introduced to the people that I work with today, to city government, to civic engagement, to community benefits agreements. It all happened with that action research project, so it was very valuable.
Right. And I guess the question that every politician is asked is why did you choose to enter, politics? What drew you to becoming an activist and a community organizer and now an Oakland City Council member?
That's a great question. And those are two different things, like what led me to being an organizer and an activist versus what led me into public service, because it's all public service.
Right.
It's just from a different perspective, but they are still very different questions. The what led me to being an organizer was my relationship with Blackness in America and everything that I experienced growing up in a very black and white town, very religious, and then seeing my taught reality being different than my lived reality in terms of you're taught that America is the greatest country in the world and that we are exceptional and we are just this big loving family and like, it's brotherly love and everybody takes care of each other and everybody can make it if you work hard enough. And then living a reality that is like staunchly opposite to everything that I was taught was like, wait a minute. And so doing more research and finding out like, what is this thing? And just, having those contradictions made me think like, oh, I got to do something about this. I got to change this,
Right.
because it's incongruent. So I want things to make sense, and I want us to be all of the things that we say we are. Um, and so that's what led me to become an activist organizer, if that's what you want to call it. I say that in quotes because it's often used as a pejorative when you get into the electoral spaces, that activists and organizer are not necessarily respected. I think I'm changing that because everybody talked down about like, oh, it's different to be in governance than actually to be pushing against it. But we need people pushing against it.
Right.
Um, and so what led me to be moving more into electoral politics was the request of those individuals that I was organizing with, saying this is the kind of energy and the integrity and the commitment that we need in office to get some of the wins that we're fighting for. So um, that's a short and long answer to your question.
No, no, and I appreciate it. I think it was FDR who coined the term activist government, back
Mm-hmm.
back in the 40s with the New Deal, and whatnot. So yeah, no, you definitely are changing the narrative of how community organizers and really how community organizers can transform the political sphere, in an elected capacity. I notice you, so that should be plenty. And I guess, circling back to your campaign last year, it was great success. What were the policy platforms you ran on, for your district? Kind of your core values. What are you trying to accomplish as an Oakland City Council member?
One of the things you just talked about was FDR and the New Deal. I ran on a New Deal for Black people in the city of Oakland.
Right.
We are supposed to be one of the most progressive cities in California and
Mm,
have some of the most regressive policies when it comes to um, discrimination and all of the different ways that we say we're about racial justice, but then we have 70% of Black people comprise 70% of the city's homeless population. That's a racial justice issue. And so in terms of economic advancement and empowerment, housing, education, we're on the bottom of every negative indicator. So I made a Black New Deal part of what I ran on, is creating the institutions and the programs and policies necessary to change that and right side that. I also ran on environmental justice. Is something now that I'm out of two of the most challenging policy areas of my 6 months in office: the Oakland City budget, the 2-year budget,
right. Yes.
and negotiating with the Oakland A's to remain in the
Yeah,
city.
that's a different story. Yeah.
So now I can start focusing on other areas that I care about, which is environmental justice, which also to me in Oakland is a racial justice issue. But also public safety. It's a big, big deal, not just here, but around the country. And I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So that's a really big issue to me. And one of the things I want to do is expand the definition of public safety so it doesn't just entail policing.
Right.
I think if we only focus on policing as public safety, then we miss the reality of what we should be focusing on to create safety. And that's access to affordable housing, jobs, and education, and infrastructure, and environment, and all of the things that are critically important, and other things that I ran on. And then housing and homelessness. Clearly, I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
I, as an organizer and activist, for me, my MO was to stay behind the scenes and be really quiet so you can get more things done because nobody's paying attention to you.
Right.
But with Moms for Housing and organizing that whole thing, that changed my entire relationship to anonymity. Um, so I think it was definitely a switch for me, but it was also necessary to highlight the challenges that we're experiencing with the affordability crisis in Oakland.
Yeah. Yeah. No, whenever anybody references the California housing crisis, I have to correct them and say it's an affordable housing crisis. Most folks don't understand that there are not enough houses, and of the houses that are left, nobody can afford. And I feel that right here in my city. I'm in the East Bay, in the suburbs, and trust me, I can talk about housing all day. It's my main prerogative here.
So we're gonna have to circle back and just have some other conversations, because that's one of my biggest issues.
Yeah, no, definitely. But sticking to the agenda, staying in 2020, I like to characterize it as, once in a century pandemic, which is still going on. We had restrictions announced this morning in our county. And this great big election, both federal, state, municipal, you name it, there were and extreme polarization, right? It was a crazy year. Kind of walk me through and reflect back on not only your election, but the general election, and how you felt about it.
Well, if you know anything about local politics, and Nina Turner, who's running for Congress right now, I just saw her a couple weeks ago, said that like local office is the closest to the people, and it's a special kind of challenge working on the local level that state and federal legislators don't have. Right. And so forgive me if I don't remember anything past yesterday, so I'm going to try to recall 2020, because that was its own special kind of what kind of show. I'm just going to put that out there. But from what I do remember about the local election is that I declared publicly in June that I was going to run, and I officially started running in July of 2020. So that gave me July, August, September, and October to run a campaign. And so against a two-term incumbent, that was quite the feat to say, I'm going to run a whole campaign in 4 months.
Yeah, under a pandemic, virtually.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you can't get out and do the things that, campaigns typically do. And I'm like, when I stepped back and looked at like, I'm challenging an incumbent, and not just any incumbent, an incumbent that has the backing of the mayor, the Democratic establishment.
Yeah.
It's just like, when I step back, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? But, we did it. And I think we did an amazing job at it. And I think that the work that it took to cover an entire district in a pandemic, and still succeed in the way that we did, it says a lot for what grassroots organizing can do. And just, also being on the side of the issues that people actually really, really care about. And just average people, not people with wealth or people with position or people with power, but just your everyday, working class person, I think really resonated and wanted to see a progressive change. And that's really scary to people. Also on the federal level, because, I wasn't really tuned in to what was happening. I know, some folks that I liked were running for office. Bernie actually won, Bernie Sanders, when he was running, won Alameda County in the primary.
Yeah.
And so, but it was just really unfortunate to see the entire Democratic establishment almost duplicate the talking points of the right and discrediting Bernie Sanders and his run for president. But it's all good, but definitely had the support of that group of folks on the ground in Oakland. Wish we would have been successful nationally, but it is what it is, and we keep organizing. So,
of course, the fight doesn't stop.
That's right.
And I guess shifting to the main focus of this channel, which is to talk about the voting rights challenges throughout the United States currently, in the 21st century. It's the same problem. It's been happening for a couple hundred years now.
Right.
My first question is pretty simple. How important is voting?
Oh, listen, do you want me to
go in?
You want me to give my perspective?
Of course. That's what we're here for.
I think you can look at it multiple ways, right? I think on a local level, voting and getting engaged civically makes a huge difference. You can reach out and talk to your elected officials. You can contact them. You can create campaigns that really have an impact. I honestly believe that the further up you go, the harder it is to do that. We struggle on a regular basis being able to move progressive policy on a statewide level because those folks are so disconnected, right? It's really difficult to get stuff done on higher levels, but it's important to organize. And I think electoral wins are directly parallel. It's not everything, but directly parallel with your ability to organize. And the higher you go, the more difficult it is to do that because um, it's so dependent on how much money you can raise, and it gets really difficult to do that. But voting is not a silver bullet. Voting is not going to change the systemic issues that we need to change in order to make the differences that we know we need to see. And that big money is so tied up in our electoral system, it's damn near impossible to get the revolutionary change that we need to make a real dent in some of our problems around the environment, around uh, decriminalization of even of drugs. Like it's still illegal. Weed is legal in Oakland and in California,
Yeah.
but on the federal level, it's not. So just in our carceral state, there's so many changes that need to be made that voting in and of itself is not going to change. We need grassroots organizers pushing outside of the electoral process to continue to get some of the wins that we need to see. And voting is also a tool in that tool chest, but it is not a silver bullet. So I just want to say that it's important. It's not the be all end all.
Yeah, no, I like to say voting is the first step, but there are, voting protests. In some ways, you're fulfilling your, in my way, civic duty, to fight for what you believe in. But the next step comes when you notice a problem, have or want to create a solution and try to implement it. And whether that's at the organizing level, whether you run for office and you try to accomplish those goals like yourself, voting cannot, like you said, it's not the silver bullet. But I encourage all my friends, top to bottom, to vote, to pre-register, to do it. But it has to be more. It has to be more than just performative activism. And I guess this is an issue that we also see in Oakland. Should 16-year-olds, I'm 17. I'll be voting in my first election next year. I'm already pre-registered, so I'm excited.
Very good.
Should 16, 17-year-olds be allowed to vote, cast a ballot in their municipal elections, for their school board elections, or in any elections?
I absolutely believe that young people whose lives are impacted by the decisions adults make
Mhm.
should be able to lend their voices and participate in the process. Especially high school students voting for school board representatives. I
Yeah,
think it's critical. I
right.
know in Oakland, our young people are far more engaged and active around issues that impact their lives in a way that's more progressive than a lot of adults. So I think they are well studied, they're well read. There are several groups that host forums, like candidate forums. I think anyone that's going to do the research should have a role in the things that impact their lives. And thank God for young people because they're the ones that are championing climate change action, racial justice action, addressing the criminal justice system. I mean, they're doing the work and are just not respected. And I think the more we have the voices of young people, I think the better our government will get because they're actually trying to hold adults responsible for the mess that they've made
Yeah,
over generations.
that we will have to eventually inherit.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Um, and kind of an extension of that is the voting rights issues we see in Georgia, in Texas. It goes up as simple as nonpartisan, poll workers handing out water bottles and being punished, for 5 years or something like that.
Right.
What are your thoughts on these crazy and in some cases, almost in my opinion, illegal, voting rights restrictions after the 2020 election?
I think it's important for us to remember that, this whole system of control, especially based on race, has not changed since Africans were brought here and enslaved and used as chattel, since the lands of our indigenous family members were stolen and taken, and they were interned. I mean, the systems of white um, patriarchal control have not changed. They've kind of gone underground in terms of just like blatant racist and blatant gender bias and how that plays out in the world. But I think because we're in the late stage capitalism, a period of late stage capitalism, and people feel like they are losing, especially this whole it's a mindset and it's a structure that keeps things the way they are in terms of controlling who can vote and how they can vote and all these things. It's a system of white male power, and they see that they're losing their grips with power. I think by 2040, I think white people are supposed to be the minority in America, and I know that's like right around the corner. It's scaring the crap out of people because that means their political power can also shift. And so that means their control over all of the things that they've been in control of. So I think these things that are happening in the South in terms of chipping away at people's ability to vote is an aspect of trying to maintain that power in those systems. And folks got to keep fighting it, because if it didn't matter, they wouldn't be paying attention to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess we're wrapping up. You're a little busy these days. Um, just in closing, what would you recommend to my generation? I think the term is called Gen Z. Not really sure where they got the Z from, but I just go with it. How do we make an impact on not only voting, elections, the policies that we believe in, or just wanting to stay engaged? What's your advice to us? Like I was saying, we're inheriting these issues. We'll be the next class of voters. What are we supposed to do about it?
Oh my goodness, just keep being who you are. I have a Gen Zer in my house who's more active and more powerful than me on any day. And
I
she's
believe it.
done work. She's amazing, and I learn from her in many ways. But it's still important to keep learning. Find people that you trust, that you can listen to and mentor with, and understand that you are also teachers to us. Like, we are students and teachers of each other. So find someone that respects youth voice to teach them and also learn from them, because the issues that you all care about are the issues of today and tomorrow. So get engaged, find someone that you can talk to and listen to and organize with, and keep being present and showing up and loud. Be loud about the things that you care about, and try to find other people who agree to the same things that you do, and build from there. Because most of everything that I've heard from the young people that are in my direct circle, because of my young person, everybody is passionate about wanting to see a better tomorrow, but sometimes might not know what to do. So find some folks, reach out to me. I mean, don't do it by email, do it by text. And we can figure out like how to get you plugged in and how to organize to get other people motivated to actually do some work and show up to change some stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And speaking of you, how can viewers stay updated on your platform? You want to link your socials? I'll have them in the description, but if you want to let them know where to go.
I'm most active on Twitter until I get like super frustrated, but folks can talk to me directly on Twitter. I'm getting better at Instagram.
Okay.
Everybody can find me at Carroll with 2 R's and 2 L's underscore Fife at most of those places. But you can also text me. I try to stay on top of my texts. Emails are terrible unless you contact my chief of staff, and that's
That's
TB.
how I did it.
Smart. See, you already know. You
I
already know
already
it.
know. Yeah.
It's just I get like 500 a day. It's like it's really difficult to stay. And if I was on email all the time, I wouldn't get anything done in the real world in terms of the policy that I'm trying to pass. But folks can text me at um, my cell phone number. That's 510-255-0236. I try to stay up on that as much as possible, but also just check me out on social media. That's the easiest way.
And can you follow me back on Twitter?
For sure. Hold on. Let me do that right now.
I've been following you for a while.
Oh my God. And so you just gotta like hit me up and be like, hey, what's up with the follow?
Yeah, man.
I'm not Gen Z. I'm not as quick on the draw as y'all are.
I think you're pretty close to it though.
What is your name on Twitter?
It's just my first and last name. First name underscore last name. Kunal Koi.
Got it. I'm gonna follow you, Kunal.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Okay. What else do I need to do?
Nothing for now. I'll
Sure?
keep you in the loop. Yeah, yeah. No, I was just playing.
Oh, look at you with Danny.
He's a really good mentor. He's actually my first podcast interviewee. He's a really good mentor.
Awesome.
Me and him talk all the time, sometimes for hours.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's been great. But yeah, is there anything you'd like to add before we close the interview?
Listen, like I don't know who's gonna hear this. I don't know who's gonna watch, but it seems like stuff gets really hard. Things are really hard, and sometimes figuring out what to get engaged in is overwhelming because everywhere you look, there's some kind of crisis or drama. Um, Pick a little thing, even if that little thing is just something that you think is insignificant, but try to get involved in something that has an impact on um, something that's bigger than your individual self. It unites you with the common good and a collective desire to make the world better, and it feeds you in a certain kind of way. But also make space to take care of yourself. I think it's really important. It's something I'm still learning, and I haven't quite perfected yet. But there's always a balance to this thing because you can wake up and find that you've given so much that you don't have anything for yourself. So in this work of organizing and actively trying to transform your community, just find the balance. That's really key in being able to have a long career in doing whatever it is that you choose to do.
Okay, word well spoken. Thank you so much for coming on the show and bringing your very unique perspective. It's been a lot of fun, and I think the viewers will find this really interesting. I'll link your socials in the description. And yeah, no, we'd be happy to have you back. If you ever aspire to climb for higher office, I'd be happy to have you back as a candidate. Talk about your policies, or if you want to introduce something else, be my guest. Come back. We'd love to have you back.
That's amazing. And whatever you're trying to do, let me know. Let me know how I can tap in. Like if you need some support, if you're trying to do some things or whatever you're trying to organize, just keep me posted. I'm following you now on Twitter, so I'm gonna create a. Let me see. Let me do an alert so I know when you're tweeting stuff.
Cool. Yeah. No, I get on Twitter every day. I retweet everybody I follow because I try to get their messages out. They can say it a lot better than me sometimes.
Yeah.
So I try to retweet. So yeah, thank you so much. And please do enjoy the rest of your day.
You do the same, and thank you for this. I love this. This was a great opportunity.
Of course.
And keep it up.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye.